Right. So we're live. We did it. Good morning, everyone, especially a very good early morning to you, Todd. Thank you for joining us this morning, way over on the West Coast. We've already gotten in our breakfast and morning runs here on the East Coast. So grateful for you joining. I am Rachael Nemeth. Welcome to another Opus Fireside Chat. This is actually our last Fireside Chat of the summer. There are more coming, but it's such a lovely way to cap off the summer which was dramatic and inspiring and challenging and all things in between. This is going to be a really important chat. A little bit about me and about Opus, and then we're just going to turn it over to these amazing speakers. So I'm Rachael Nemeth. I'm the CEO of Opus. I have with me some incredible leaders here. And in the next hour, we're going to be talking about regional differences in restaurant training. This is a critical topic as we talk about reopening. So just a little bit about Opus, and then we're going to dive in. The restaurant world, specifically in the restaurant world, frontline employees make up about 80% of the 11 million people who are currently employed in the industry. But modern technology has left behind businesses that have a frontline workforce. What's been happening is that there are platforms that are built for desk workers and then repurposed for our deskless workforce. So that leads to a lot of technological challenges in the workplace, specifically in restaurants. So Opus is a really simple, powerful, multilingual micro-training platform that helps you deliver training over text message. So we help businesses ramp up new hires, onboarding, reboarding, cross-boarding, upskilling, all of the INGs in a really simple, powerful way. My background is in the hospitality industry. Previous to Opus, I owned ESL Works, which delivered English as a second language training in restaurants. Previous to that, I worked at Union Square Hospitality Group. Before that, bakeries and manufacturing. I'm basically a lifer in the industry. As the story goes, I spent my whole life trying to get out of the restaurant industry, and it kept sucking me back in. I think a story most of us know very well. Mm-hmm. So enough about me. I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. Who are you? What do you do? And what is your favorite guilty pleasure song or song that you always put on repeat and never tell anyone about? Ashley, I'm going to let you start.
Oh, wow. Hello, I'm Ashley Helkin. I'm also a lifelong restaurant hospitality person. I live in Dallas, Texas. I work for Cotton Patch. Great company. We have 50 locations across 3 states, 49 full service restaurants and 1 remote kitchen. We're a family restaurant. All of our food is scratch made, and we really embed ourselves in smaller communities, some metroplexes, but a lot of smaller communities. And then probably my guilty pleasure song is from Tomb Raider. There's a version of Survivor that I really like. And I like to play it early in the morning and wake the entire house up to play it really loud.
I love it. This is one of my favorite questions to ask our team because it always changes too. John, take it away. Who are you? What do you do? And favorite guilty pleasure song?
I am John Isbell. I too am a lifer in the restaurant industry, although I did take some time out to go to the Air Force for that. But I also worked in restaurants while I was in the Air Force because I have job ADD back then. But yes, I'm head of training for Portillo's Hot Dogs Incorporated. We are a sort of a Chicago icon that's now spreading out to many other states, but it's Italian beef sandwiches, Chicago style hot dogs, just really good. We call it Chicago street food. And we've got 65 units. We've got a central kitchen, a ghost kitchen as well. And we're getting ready to open our drive-through only unit coming soon. So really taking some things that we learned from the COVID pandemic and applying them to some of our business structures. So pretty cool there. My guilty pleasure song, I've got a bunch. This is a tough one. I'm going to go with No Diggity. That's why it just gets me pumped every time I hear it. So.
You just reminded me, John, that we probably need another fireside chat specifically about drive-throughs. I think there's an entirely different training around how to train those folks. So thank you for the tip
Yes.
there.
Got it.
Todd, welcome.
Hi there.
Who are you? What do you do? And favorite guilty pleasure song?
I'm Todd Woodruff. I'm the Chief People Officer for Salt and Straw, and I am based in Portland, Oregon. We have 25 ice cream shops. Portland founded, then of course we're in most of California, Washington, and most recently we opened 2 shops in Miami. So we are a growing company of artisan ice cream. We create well over 120 flavors a year. It's on a rotating seasonal menu. Basically once a month, there's a new set of flavors for us. Yeah, so that's sort of what we do. We have a pretty substantial e-commerce business where we sell ice cream all over the country as well. So that's a part of us. I would say probably there's so many songs I could call on, but I'm going to really dig deep and embarrass myself and tell you that Miley Cyrus Party in the USA is one of my favorite jams of all time. Makes me happy.
It's an important discussion for us to have, perhaps an entirely new fireside chat. Thank y'all. To start off, just a quick warm-up question. I know this is something we always open with, but it changes throughout the year. Ashley, maybe we'll kick it off with you. Real quick, kind of rapid fire round here. Describe the state of training in restaurants in 3 words.
I would say it's challenging, it's changing, but it's also really creative.
I love that. John.
Rapidly evolving technology.
I can get behind that.
You're welcome.
Todd.
I would say it's restless, but also progressive in its approach, and time consuming.
Agreed.
We went hyphenated on that 3rd word. Nice. Well played, sir. Well played, Todd.
So let's kick it off. We need to be talking about the state of the industry, what's happening right now. This is not a retrospective. This is about what's happening in the present and what's happening moving forward across the country. To set the stage for all of our viewers, everyone here who's watching is in the restaurant industry. In today's chat, we're going to be focusing on how training approaches and requirements change from region to region. So to give everyone some context, I want to point out the depth of experience that our speakers have with respect to training from state to state and region to region. So Portillo's 60 locations across Arizona, California, Florida, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin.
Nice, nailed it.
If you heard, I know, I was just rattling that off. If you hear your state out there in the stratosphere, this chat is for you. We also have Cotton Patch Cafe, 50 locations across New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. I believe the majority of your locations are in Texas, right, Ashley?
They are.
Great. Also, Salt and Straw, 24 locations, West Coast primarily, Oregon, Washington, California, and Miami, Florida. So what we're going to focus on is training content requirements and the people who are training, and what, if any, adjustments need to be made if you are a multi-unit restaurant group, which of course y'all are. So let's start. Todd, I'll kick it off with you. We're going to kind of start West Coast and move our way across the country.
Perfect.
What, if any, changes in your job have occurred over the past year? What new muscle as a training leader have you had to develop?
Oh gosh, that's a big question. Well, I oversee the whole HR organization, so training is a part of that. We're just an evolving organization, so I've just brought on a training team. But I would say that the changes are really in the delivery, and how we've had to become really sort of, I would say, focus on heavy topics when we're doing it even virtually. So a lot of the training that you're usually able to do sort of face-to-face or in person, we've had to adapt and do a lot of these things in a way that we've never had to do them, having even some very tough conversations virtually. So I would say that's probably the biggest change, is that we're doing everything virtually for the most part.
I'm interested to hear if that's been the case for you as well.
I'd actually read my notes apparently during the pre-thing because that's exactly what I have there. Distance learning is a way of life now, whereas before it was a one-off. We'd occasionally do it if somebody couldn't come in. We might put a camera on and let them sit in on a class while we were doing live classes. Now, especially for somebody like me who is really animated, I like to move around a lot when I teach. It's tough to sit in front of a camera and keep that same energy and that same liveliness so that's a muscle that I had to build, and all of our facilitators had to build, is how do you keep a lively, energetic class when you're sitting in front of a computer screen? So that's really the biggest change for us. The other piece, and Rachel, you and I have talked about this before, is how do you build muscle memory without being shoulder to shoulder and without practicing on your guests? So that's the other piece of it.
Yeah, the whole blended learning aspect has changed a lot over the last year. Perhaps even the definition in and of itself. I don't know what
Right.
Princeton and Stanford are doing right now, but I'm sure something's going to happen. Ashley, what about you?
Our biggest change over the last year is that we actually went digital and mobile. So that was a big change for the organization. And just the pace of change for us, we've had to reevaluate how we develop materials so that they're specific and targeted, but they're built to where we can edit them very easily and be nimble as life changes.
That word nimble, I wonder if we're going to be hearing it a lot over the next 45 minutes.
Yes. I was going to just mention to Ashley, have you noticed too, maybe this isn't, we used to really concentrate on putting out these great things, and now because we have to pivot so fast, let's concentrate on good and get good out and get good out fast, as opposed to waiting to build this great for a long period of time and then putting out this great thing that's fantastic, but then it's changing like 2 minutes later because of the ever speed. So we've gone a lot.
Precision. Yeah, it's really about precision and sort of getting to it as quickly as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah, we try to just remember who our audience is, and they need us to be on time versus perfect. And it goes against everything that I was raised in restaurants.
Me too, yes.
And in learning and development. So I fight myself to serve the right people.
That's so funny, yes.
We always say that in training, it sort of as in the world of training, there's always this struggle with when is my course or when is my lesson or when is my training done? When is it ready to deploy? We use a term called good enough because we know that you have to be iterating. And it's really a startup mentality, but it's also a training mentality that I think I would guess has really hopefully eliminated some stress in your organizations.
It's stressful in a different way.
Yeah, it's changed the stress.
For those of us who were trained classically to build things, this what we call the right way. But our CEO is constantly saying, don't let great get in the way of good. Right. So don't keep trying to fight for this great over a long period of time. Get good out, and our people are really comfortable with good right now.
Yeah. We have a saying, speed to make impact. So let's make impact at a quick speed instead of trying to hone in on all these details that don't have the same impact.
Well, let's talk about impact and the way the industry is moving right now. So some statistics we'll start with. So demand and sales are soaring in multi-unit groups. By contrast, the restaurant workforce fell far short of pre-pandemic numbers. This is the headline right now. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, total employment has reached 10.8 million. That's 1.8 million fewer workers employed across all of the food industry and all segments in May of 2021 than pre-pandemic. Not only that, the Bureau of Labor Statistics points out that the quit rate in hospitality is at 5.3%, which is the highest of all industries. So right now, we're hearing it across the board. Hiring is in a state of crisis, which makes new hire training and retention strategies critical. So that begs the question, how much of training at your business is focused on those new hires right now? And is this a different ratio than you saw pre-pandemic? And then, if you could think about some of the different states that you're in as well, and maybe some of the trends that you're seeing as far as new hires. If anyone wants to chime in, I'll let you take the stage.
I can charge into that. I think it's been it's been fascinating to watch what's happening, and being in states where programs like state unemployment are actually really healthy when you add on the federal subsidy. We've really struggled. We've been very proud to be able to stay opening in all of our shops through COVID. We even opened 3 shops during the last 3 or 4 months. So we've maintained a very busy approach, but when it comes to onboarding, it's almost a full time. We're doing sort of orientations, a very thorough orientation once a week, every Monday, that takes 4 hours. And then from there, it's sort of an in-shop, hand-over-hand sort of training. So we're spending a lot of money in training hours to make sure that we're carefully presenting the really sticky parts of our culture, and so that people are learning about who we are before they show up to their first day. So it's a heavy lift, and it involves multiple people. We've also been quickly adapting to creation and production, some video segments that we can start using to sort of introduce the product to new employees and the service model to new employees. We've completely had to change our service model, as many of us had, but the Salt and Straw experience is really a high touch. You go into the shop and there's a whole tasting operation where we serve samples in little tiny beautiful silver spoons. The employees talk about it like it's fine wine. They're unique flavors. And so we've had to pivot from actually doing samples over COVID to teaching our people to talk about it. How do you talk about an ice cream base that's steeped in 3 different kinds of mushrooms before it goes through a process with 3 different kinds of cheeses, like very unique flavors? And so teaching them to talk about it has been a real big part of this training and this onboarding training, without having a lot of touch. So it's been a challenge, but exciting to see what we can do, I think, also when the content or sort of the ethos of the service model exists. We've just had to figure out how to talk about it and how to write about it and describe it.
That's super interesting. I want to hear from Ashley on this one. Midwest. South.
It's different here. We have a lot of outlier markets, and where we struggle is we had these culture anchors that we relied on to breed the culture within our cafes. And now that a lot of those people have left us, in certain markets, we have to figure out how to do that digitally, because travel is difficult. And so what we just relied on is kind of tribal knowledge. We're having to refocus our efforts on preserving and documenting and following up on, which is difficult. We've also developed a lot of time. We're starting to invest in multi-unit leadership, not just at an area director level, but some of our cafe leaders have to pull double duty and help with other restaurants. So to give them that skill is something we've invested some time in. But I think the most interesting change for us is this teamwork is something that you typically teach shoulder to shoulder. And once you lose trainers and established team members, it's hard to train that. So how do we help them do more with fewer people, make a bigger impact during busier times and newer times where they don't have this experience from previous jobs? But then with our management teams, teaching our managers to be better team members, to fit more work into less time. And it just shuffled everything. So I'd say the mix shifted slightly more to skill development, but we're still probably 80% hardcore focus on new team members.
John, is that percentage the same at Portillo's, you think?
So I'd say we're 60% focused on new hires. And it's a little lower actually before the pandemic, not because of the pandemic though. So because it's so hard to get team members in because recruiting is so hard. We really wanted to focus on how do we keep them? And one of the ways you keep your team members is you give them development and you give them a way to grow and go up. And so we've started doing these development waves, which is getting people ready to be a crew chief before there's a crew chief position open, so that when the crew chief position's open, you just slide right in. And we've had a lot of success lately just with that program. So our crew chief program, we have a program where crew chiefs can get ready to be managers. And so it's a development, it's a weekly class. It's on top of some of the things that they're already doing in the restaurants, but it's given us a really big kick in, like we just did our engagement surveys, and it's some of the highest scores we've ever had because people are engaged because we care about them and are showing them we care about them. It's really big in our outer markets. So we've got the Chicago core, and then we've got, as you mentioned, we've got a bunch of other states. And in those states where they didn't know us very well because they didn't grow up on that, right? They didn't grow up on Portillo's. When you see a Portillo's go up in Iowa, you're like, what's this Mexican restaurant over here, right? Because you don't know, you didn't grow up. You're like, oh, Portillo's, that sounds delicious. But when you know about Chicago and you know about the things that go on here, it's easier to get people to just be excited to come in and work there because they grew up on it. When you go out of market, you've got to train them, what both of these guys are saying, you've got to train them on what your process even is, what your company even is, what the values are, the purpose. And so we spent a lot of time talking about our purpose and values and making sure that people understand what that is, because that's our common language.
So the common thread that I'm not surprised to hear there is that L&D is actually, it's of course an effective way to onboard and cross-board your people, but it could potentially be an impactful strategy in recruitment. And as you're partnering with that department, has this changed for you? Is this something that, are you finding that you're advertising your L&D program more to prospective hires? Has it not changed at all? I'm curious.
I'll start with that because we've started to do something different. We do a quarterly career interest day now. This year, where people can, before, when you wanted somebody to be a crew chief, you're like, oh, that kid's got potential, and you tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, you want to be a crew chief? But for people who wanted to be that but didn't get that notice or just didn't know how to get into it, there was no way for them to ever break that ceiling. Now, every quarter we have our market managers take one of their restaurants, invite people from all of their restaurants to come and listen. We talk about the career path, we talk about what you can do, our development programs, those sorts of things. And it gets people kind of excited. And we've had just a deluge of people going, oh, I want to be a crew chief. And they're signing up. And we've just put out, our last crew chief class had 64 people in it. And we started with 7, the first one. That's how these waves are growing. So, and it was after our second career interest day that we went to the bigger class. So we think it's working. It's just a way to get people engaged again. And here's what you're doing. And it makes people feel like, oh, I've got a shot. I mean, we get comments like, this is the first time anybody's ever actually believed in me. This is the first time I've ever known that I've got something more than just being a beef person. And it's pretty fantastic. It's been great. So that's how we're doing our advertising.
I love that. I think for us, most of our advertising is internal or for higher positions, shift lead and above. It's not really a thing we push for just hourly frontline employees, but the other ones we've seen major interest in learning what they like, developing their skills, identifying gaps, and presenting them opportunities of ways they can learn to better themselves. That same thing, I think it's been really helpful for us.
Yeah, I would say one thing that we've done differently is very quickly I realized that we needed to be very closely connected with our marketing team and think about recruitment and attracting talent as a part of our marketing strategy. We do all of our marketing via social media. So why aren't we doing all of our recruiting via social media was the first question I asked. And I just joined the company 5 months ago, I have to tell you. So I'm sort of building this team as I go, but how do we sort of attract them? And I love what you were saying, John. One of the things that we've been doing is doing some web profiles and putting out into our social media stories of people who've grown up in the business that talk about their path and how they got not just to Salt and Straw, but how they may have rolled into a district manager position or a GM We've also done a really great job of broadcasting different jobs and different career paths. So over the summer, I'm really proud that we took people from the shops and multiple people in the shops and put one in marketing as sort of an extern. We put 2 in finance. I brought in 2 brand new HR coordinators to the HR team, who we've brought in from other parts of the business and operations to show career paths. That's been really important, and our people have been asking for it. So yeah, we spend a lot of focus on hiring people, but also I'm just in the same boat where the development of the talent we have and retaining them by showing them what the path can be is really, really important and has worked.
Hey, Rachel, can I add something to Todd's? Because I love
please.
about showing like where people have come from, those stories. That's a big part of our career interest day. Is every one of our executives started at a restaurant level position.
Yep.
Like every one of them, except for maybe our CFO, but everyone else, like our head of HR started as the mouse at Chuck E. Cheese, right? And with the head on and all that stuff. Like they love hearing those stories and they go, holy crap, if they did that, I can do that too. And so it's a big part. And I think storytelling is so important, especially with the group that comes in. Like you've got to capture them somehow. And that's one of those ways to do it.
And I think a lot of what we know, the dirty little secret about the hospitality industry is that if you work in the industry, you can really exhibit range. You can show the level of skill that you have beyond just being a server or a cook. There's so many other elements to that work. And so I love hearing that you're kind of leveraging that and taking time to illustrate what different skill paths could be, that it doesn't match the hierarchy of your organization. It rarely does.
And it's not linear. It's not always linear as well. I think people always, particularly in the shops and in the field, they think it's, oh, I'm going to be a scooper, as we call them, then I'm going to be a supervisor, then an AGM, then GM, and that's the path that goes to DM and so on. But there's a lot of different options, and our company, our business has grown on the fact that people have been allowed to challenge themselves and do different things, even without having the traditional educational background you would traditionally see. So that's been great. And it creates, again, some stickiness to the brand where people are sticking with us. Our frontline employee, they make great money through tips. And so we're able to compete with bartenders and good bars, good servers. It's a place for people to come and work their way through school, primarily, and that's probably 70% of our frontline. They're college students, but there's also another group in there that we've seen who have finished their studies and then stayed on even when they were in microbiology major or whatever it was, because they want to try something different. So it's been really powerful for us, I think, to talk about the different paths that people can take.
So Todd, you bring something up. We were going to talk about this near the end of the chat, but I want to talk about it now, this is about regional training differences. It's also about generational training differences. And by the way, if you're just tuning in, we are live here on our last Opus Fireside Chat of the summer with training and people leaders from Cotton Patch Cafe, Portillo's, and Salt and Straw. Todd, John, and Ashley are talking about regional training differences. And so I want to drift into this conversation about Gen Z. So some statistics, which is my favorite way to start a question. So in QSRs and fast casual restaurants, 65% of workers are younger than 25 years old, which pretty much matches your statistic, Todd. Some say that the group that is most dynamic and least well-known is Gen Z. When it comes to information, more than half of Gen Zers say that they go to YouTube for information, which is just in front of Facebook and Instagram. Meanwhile, 70% of frontline employees said app-based training would be easier. So you see where I'm headed with this. Given the generational shift in our workforce, what tactics are you thinking about that will engage that workforce? And are you noticing differences, generationally speaking, across the states in which you're working or the cities, perhaps?
We're all being polite, waiting for someone else.
I was going to call on you, and I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
John, maybe you can kick it off. You actually have the broadest range of states that you're training in.
Yeah, so statewide, you're limited a little bit sometimes with what you can do with like phones, for instance, depending on what the labor laws are. California's are easily our toughest, and Todd knows this better than anyone. It's a beast, right? So you have to really be careful about what you train, how you train, what platform you use. We're really trying to push towards using mobile phones as just an everyday regular training device. And it's hard because in the restaurant world, we've always said, don't bring your phones, don't have your phones, you're not allowed to have your phone, right? It's very much phones are bad and you should never do that. And so getting that change, but I have an 18-year-old son, and I remember this last year, he just finished high school. And I remember walking in one day and I said, I thought you were doing your homework, because he was on his phone. I said, I thought you were doing your homework. He's like, I am. I just took my quiz. And like, he was doing it on his phone. I'm like, you've got a laptop and a desk and all this stuff, and you're on the couch with your phone. But that's just the way this generation learns. It's the way they work. And so we're really pushing people towards that. The other thing we're trying to do is just make everything a game, everything as a gamification of badges and all this stuff that people seem to cling to, which you go, I can't believe people would get excited by that, but they do. They like the competition. We try to make real experiential training now, as opposed to just a video that they watch. They've got to build the sandwiches while they're on their phone or their iPad or whatever. And so, yeah, trying to go that route. But again, California is my toughest market to do stuff like that in, just because of labor laws and those things. So we're really working on how do we geofence it so it can't go outside the restaurant and those sorts of things. So IT is working with us on that. So we're early stages, but getting some pretty good reviews on the tests that we're doing. So
yeah, so we've just gone digital and mobile, and that's been the hardest issue. Is we want them to use their phones, we want them to use tablets in the restaurants, but the leadership isn't Gen Z, and they're struggling with this kind of old school mentality of stay off your phone, ask permission. How do we include sound without it interrupting the guest experience, and making sure that it fits in the time that they're there, so we're not asking them to stay 45 minutes after each shift or come in early. So there's some challenges to it. We found gamifications worked really well, engaging the younger teams to kind of peer pressure the managers into letting them be more mobile. And then we've done a few more mobile things. We just adopted Yelp waitlist. So we're appealing from a much broader sense to a younger audience. And we're having to kind of drag the leadership along by showing them that this is what their people want. And so it's an interesting dynamic. We've also seen in some of our outlier markets where our teams are more established, it's a much harder integration. And things like menu training and some culture training, the trainers don't want the new people to learn it on an app. So there's this kind of back and forth. So we're trying to engage a different workforce and have a couple different strategies. So it's been a challenge, but it's a fun time and a fun challenge you can only fail forward in engagement, right?
That's what they say. Yeah, we've got a sort of a unique scenario. All of the tough states. In my previous role, I was operating in 42 states. So I'm used to sort of the cumbersome approach to this, and it does take a lot of legal support to understand things. So we're in a unique position where we're not preparing anything in our shops. It's just scooping ice cream. So it's really pretty simple. And that's allowed us to be really basic in our approach to training and how you actually do the, making the cone or actually scooping the cone. That part is really straightforward and doesn't require a lot of tools. The flip side of that is the human contact that is such a big part of the Salt and Straw experience. If you've ever seen one of our shops, there's usually a line around the block. We are literally between 3 and 4 times more busy than any of our competitors. We're making money in our shops where most of our competitors are not. There's something about the experience. It really is the experience of going in and having this full face contact with a person who is there and in it with you and connecting with you. So that's the secret sauce to what we do, and what our people who are successful learn to do is to connect with other people through the wonder of ice cream, and sort of engage them in tasting new things and trying some of our unique flavors to sort of pull them in to the experience. It's a very unique transaction because it's only about joy. There is no other purpose for ice cream than joy. So we have not had to do a lot of that kind of training from a service level. And we've been pretty consistent in how we've done it around the country because it's very hands-on. As I said, there are some video components that we're using and some other training that's become really important to us, like the cultural justice, social justice training, and equity awareness. Those kinds of things have been a heavy push and a demand from our employees over the last year. That area has created some challenge generationally, I will tell you, and also from a regional place. I can tell you, for instance, in Portland, which is my new home, I just moved here from Scottsdale a few months ago. The passion for social justice and a focus on equity is so strong here that if we're not speaking of it and talking about it and even acknowledging, heritage lands where we operate, if we don't have that as a focus, we completely lose the engagement of our employees. It's a little bit different in Florida, and we're having to learn and adjust and sort of make that message land with them in a way that's impactful. But I would say those are the areas. It's sort of the more of the cultural stuff where we're having to learn to be digital, and that's been a struggle for those in sort of my generation of Gen X or whatever it is. But the hand over hand and sort of the actual training of the experience has not changed much.
Mm. So it's almost like, excuse me, the way that we approach these topics it might vary from state to state. This brings me to a question, and very related. Fred Cabral from Compass Group. Fred, thanks for watching. Writes, do you all find that purposefully talking about DE&I during the onboarding process is more important than it was before? Todd, it sounds like it has been for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And it also, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I've been so impressed and excited by the way our teammates, our team members have sort of called us to the carpet and held us accountable for these topics in a very meaningful way. It's been a great thing. It's been a challenge, but it's been interesting, and it's been good for us. I think it's been good for the leaders to learn to adapt.
Well, and that sort of links to what you were saying too, Ashley, which is that, I didn't see this 15 years ago in restaurants where, God bless my whole LinkedIn profile, but I couldn't, my managers weren't listening to me when I said what I preferred and how I preferred to train and what I preferred as an employee. It feels like the frontline is really more a part of that decision-making process, if not directly, but we're asking them to contribute because we know that the risk is that they leave and they go find someplace else.
Yeah. We firmly believe peer pressure gets a bad rap, but peer pressure can be used for good stuff. And that we try to remember that one size approach is a type of force, right? And force is always met with resistance. And so if we want to lessen the path to resistance, we have to listen more and be more open and nimble and engage them and to ask what they want, and they'll bring their friends with them. That's the easiest recruitment strategy for us. Instead of just, forcing one method. It's a challenge to meet everyone and kind of pick and choose because somebody's want is going to get left out.
Mm. There's that word nimble and agile again. So we only have about 20 minutes left. I want to shift a little bit of the conversation here and focus on topics. And then we're going to drift into some specific kind of regional statistics that I wanted to see if they match with y'all. So with COVID training, I ran into a restaurant owner, one of our customers the other day in New York, and he said 90% of my job now is focused on COVID policies still in 2020. It's August 31st today. They operate in 4 different states. So, it's obvious that these regulations change from state to state. They're so distinct. So what are some of the most important training topics around COVID that you've had to focus on this summer? And how might these topics be changing from state to state, if at all? Or is there any sort of universal training? It's sort of a broad question, but it's like, a year ago we were asking, okay, well, COVID training is just, okay, this is a one-off. We need to make sure you know how to wear a mask. We need to make sure you understand proper procedure. But now, is it here to stay?
So it's interesting if it's here to stay, because it feels like it's coming back, right? So we started to lessen and kind of get away from it a little bit. Now we see with the rise in cases and all the stuff, it's coming back. So now for us, it's actually gearing up to, all right, how do we get people back into that? We'd kind of forgotten about it. Now we got to get back to masks. So universal, what's continued to be our focus is safety, guest safety, team member safety. That's universal. It doesn't matter what state we're talking about. It's all, how do we keep our guests safe? How do we keep our team members safe and create an environment where people want to come, right? So that doesn't change. What does change with us is, what are the town regulations? What are the city regulations? What are the state regulations that you now have to worry about? And again, I hate to bag on California all the time, but easily the toughest place that we have, the most regulations. It's the most strenuous place that just strangles every bit of life out of us. And then you go to Florida, right? We've got restaurants in Florida where it's happy time, go lucky, and everybody, it's the Wild West. That's like there's no COVID's ever existed down there. And so it's just such a different array as you go across the country. Midwest, Chicago's getting tough again, and they've always been, it's one of the blue areas, and they're very tough on that. It's very stringent. You do find that some of your states where it's a little more Republican, it's a little, and you don't want to get into a political thing, but it's just weird how that flows with that same, with the politics of the state and the town, is how tough the regulations are, basically. So
for us, I think the safety aspect of it will always, I think that's here to stay, right?
Yeah.
Whether you use disinfectant or sanitizer, those details will ebb and flow depending. For us, the big change is dealing with having our frontline team members face the political aspect of, they're not in charge of regulations, but somebody's always going to buck against it and be frustrating. And so we've historically taught them how you deal with upset guests, about things we can control, about food quality and about environment and attitudes and service levels, but you can't argue with their political or theological leanings. So how do we teach our people to stay neutral and to respect someone's beliefs and to respect them as a loyal guest, but also to toe the hard line of, they have rules and regulations they have to follow for the safety of our team and our guests. And that's really, it's such a hard thing, and it changes, and we're battling, our leaders, our cafe leaders' politics play into it, and their team's politics play into it. And it's really having to adjust and be nimble. But for us, that's been the biggest change that we keep coming back to. And we finally resigned that we're never going to get through it. So let's just embrace it and make it a part of kind of everything we do instead of fighting against it.
Yeah, that de-escalation training has become a huge part of what we do. De-escalation is a giant piece now, because guests are so mad at us, just in general. They're mad at the world, right? And so you just see this really bad treatment of our team members by guests who are just tired of being in masks. They're tired of being cooped up. They can't believe we're getting back into it. And so how do you take that and how do you de-escalate it? Sorry, Todd, I didn't know.
No, we're all having the same problems. This in itself this is definitely its own fireside. We could talk for hours about this. It's been challenging because, again, as I mentioned, we've had to really change our entire process of service. And that's been connected to COVID. We've had to put up barriers, where people are behind. We've had to sort of create a physical distance between our guests and our employees, which has been really challenging. We are in sort of the high sort of regulation states. And just as John said, our approach has been to follow local regulations. As an organization, our position has been consistent and we have been in lots of communication. We believe the science behind this. We do not engage in political conversations about it. I do not engage in conversations about pseudoscience or the things that are not sort of defined and monitored by science. And so we talk a lot about these things. There was an article recently in Forbes and a bunch of different magazines that 96% of doctors from the American Medical Association support and have had their own vaccines and are pushing their patients to have it. So I'm not a doctor. I don't have any doctors on the team, but we're going to trust the science and we're going to do the best that we can. We've taken the step over the last couple of weeks to do a vaccination mandate. And I have been managing that with my HR team of 10 people very delicately to be careful in our approach to people who need accommodations based upon strongly religious beliefs or medical. We've had to sort of work through some of those things that are very challenging, but we are holding firm to the fact that the only way we're going to get through this is through vaccinations. And we're going to trust that science, and it's working. We've had some fallout. We've lost some employees, but we feel that that's been okay. And the fact that we're creating a safe environment for our teams and for our customers. And that's the priority. It's the larger group we have to focus on instead of the singular people who may have a problem with the policy.
This is so consistent with everything that we've been hearing in the Northeast also. It's the emphasis on, the priority is the safety of our customers and our people and our community. De-escalation training has taken front seat in every organization we're speaking with, and people are trying to navigate what that looks like. There's really no book yet on how to address, when a hostess has an angry customer, and the stories are endless, but training is such an important part of that to empower our people to make the right decisions, even if it comes down to pull in a manager, we'll support you.
And it keeps going on. And the message we've given to our team is, hey, listen, this is where we stand today. This is an evolving situation. Stick with us because our policy may pivot tomorrow.
Yeah.
It may have to. And we're seeing in some of the areas where we have a large business, like in San Francisco, where similar to New York, where you're going to have to show a vaccine card just to get in. So it's becoming more and more challenging, but when you rely on the local regulations and to the point where we print off the local signs and we have those posted so that we can say, look, this is not our policy, this is not our decision, this is the local regulation. But it's all about de-escalation. It's all about sort of patiently and kindly talking to folks so that they understand the position.
So I want to cap off this conversation. This is a link or an extension of what we've just been talking about. And then we're going to go into my favorite question, which is predictions. And I hold you all accountable to that question. So we have a lot of operators watching. We have a lot of training directors watching, some of whom are just now reopening their locations. All of you have experienced some locations closing, but you have had some consistent locations. What advice would you give to operators who need to retrain, to reboard or onboard their people right now?
I would say concentrate on the guest experience. Mm-hmm. And Todd talked about it and Ashley talked about it, that when they come in again, they're coming into this place where it's like, oh, I miss this place, right? Like if you've done it right, and Portillo's is a little different because our buildings are part of our experience, right? They look like they were taken out of an amusement park in some cases. So they're just such part of the experience. But it's nice to see the wonder of people wanting to just come in and just talk to our cashiers and be like, oh my gosh, I've missed you. And there's just this memory. So for us, it was focused on the guest experience. We lost a lot of muscle memory because people forgot to rhyme when they give them their bags, or like you had to retrain what are the touch points that make it a special experience. And when you concentrate on those things, everything else kind of just falls in line. But so I would say concentrate on those touch points for the guest experience.
Yeah, I think ours is the same. It's a lot of concentrate on the guest experience and to remind them that when guests come back and let us know that they've been with us before to be grateful about it. That while we always want to attract new guests, we want to really, if people notice price increases or differences, what that tells us is that they're loyal, and to pick that piece out of it. I think for us too, one of the things that I would suggest is there's a bigger workload being asked of our operators. And one of the things we try to do is to help them fit it in their day. It's not just about knowing what to do, but how to fit it into this new evolving. Checking in a truck order takes longer because of COVID restrictions, and staffing takes longer, and rewriting schedules when staffing is difficult. So if we ask one more thing of them, for us, it feels like it's just this. But for them, we have to help them fit it into their day. So, I'd suggest reevaluate their workflow and show them the how, not just kind of what needs to be done.
Yeah, I got to agree with Ashley. It is about the how. I think it's so sort of our reflex is to get really tight with policy and practice and procedure. What we've tried to do is back it all the way up to the whys and sort of appeal to the emotional intelligence of our team members, our scoopers. Like, yes, the service model may be different today. It may be pivoting, it may be in flux, but that experience that you are there to provide, or that engagement that you're there to have with that customer, sharing the joy of ice cream. How do you do that at all of these different levels? I think that has been something that's been really successful for us, is to talk about the outcomes. What are we trying to do? Anchoring ourselves to sort of our beliefs and our principles, and showing up generously and sort of sharing kindness in a real moment with someone. It can be done even in a very limited transaction where we're just handing somebody off who's maybe picking something up from a pickup window instead of the full face-to-face experience. So talking about what those goals and what that sort of system of belief is within Salt and Straw has been really important. And then to allow our policies and our practices and our procedures sort of flow down from there, because they're changing every day. There's so much about them that has to evolve. We've gone up, we've gone back down, right? We've been completely open, now we're back in masks. It's an ongoing movement. And if we don't talk about the reasons why, as Ashley said, if we don't talk about sort of the DNA that we as an organization have beyond just our culture and how that is expressed, I think that's the part where we've been very fortunate to have some of those pieces already existing to talk about.
Hey, Rachel, can I give one more piece of advice to new training people who are coming in and needing some help? Use resources, use books like Opus, right? Use most of us in here have been involved with the Council of Hotel and Restaurant Trainers, or CHART. Use these organizations to get more information, to get some help. You don't have to do it by yourself. It's a tough gig when you first get into training to figure out how and why to do that, because most of us were operators who came into training, and trying to learn that stuff. So use resources and find what helps you.
Yeah, these fireside chats started, well, Opus was founded in the middle of COVID, but the fireside chat started in the middle of COVID also. And it was really because all of a sudden, as training leaders, we knew that we needed to extend ourselves more and get more resources so we can support our people better. We can't live in this silo anymore. And to your point, Todd, it's because things are changing so often. We're managing different state regulations. We didn't even brush on sexual harassment prevention and how that is also changes from state to state, right?
Another fireside chat.
It's another well, September is compliance month in Opus, so you can expect that conversation, and also conversations around how mobile compliance changes from state to state and what we can do, knowing that this is the direction that training is headed. How can we make sure that we're compliant with state regulations, but also serving our people and what we know is going to engage them most. So with all of that being said, favorite question, well, there's a lot of favorite questions. I think my favorite question was asking you what your guilty pleasure song is, but that's a year from now, it's August 31st, 2022. Have things changed? What do you see happening in the world of restaurant training or food industry training 365 days from now?
Do we win something if a year from now one of us is correct? Okay.
Yeah. I'm just not, I don't know what it is.
What do we win? Because that might direct
change my answer.
Yeah. I'll go. I think some very industrious company is going to find a way to make artificial intelligence much more gettable, much more affordable, much more user-friendly, so that people can continue to build muscle memory and not practice on guests. When we finally do that, when you can build a sandwich through, the goggles and doing that, so you're actually literally doing it in front of you, then when you get to the line, it's not so daunting. Then you can do that. And my prediction is somebody's going to figure out a way to make it affordable, and somebody's going to figure out a way to use it and use it to their advantage. Maybe more than a year, but that's where I'm going.
It's like, that's going to be a quick year.
I'm going to talk to my business partner. He's our chief technologist. So I'll get back to you.
I'm telling you,
I think it might be more than a year.
Like a mint.
I think for my prediction is, we've always just kind of seen restaurants as a hospitality. And I think it's actually two businesses, right? That we manufacture in the back and we retail in the front. And that a lot of the people that we recruit are salespeople, and then we try to teach them the manufacturing side. I think that we're going to see a bigger push to take people who come up in non-engagement industries, like manufacturing, and figure out how to teach them the hospitality aspect of it. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I would say, I think there's going to be a whole new respect for people in our line of work. I mean, I've been doing hospitality my entire career. I think that when we see people leaving the industry the way that we have, and how hard it is to hire and retain folks, I think the message that a lot of us are taking in, that we're going to see, is that we need to treat this profession with more respect. And we need to treat particularly the frontline team member, somebody who's a server, with the respect of this is a career choice and a real career option. In my travels, I've been all around the world, and you see how this profession that we're lucky to be a part of has so much more opportunity and so much more protection to it in other parts of the world. When we think about the way we approach servers with tipping minimums and pay, when we look at the fact that so many people in our industry don't have access to benefits, whether healthcare benefits or anything of that nature, I think all of that changes because of COVID. I think that's the silver lining for our industry, where there's a new respect for the work our people do, and where companies like ours are going to be held accountable for developing those careers and providing longevity and a full scope of pay and benefits to those people. That's going to impact pay. It's going to impact the cost of service as well, and of food. But I think that the whole world comes along in that journey, and I'm really excited about it.
A whole other aspect of training, which is how do we educate our people on benefits? This is something else we're seeing, making sure that they're taking advantage of that. I love that, and I hope all of this rings true. John, we'll get back to you about AR. I think it'll be more than a year, but you never know. It is the top of lunchtime here on the East Coast. Todd, time for you to go grab some breakfast. Thank you.
9 o'clock.
Ashley, John, Todd, this was an absolute pleasure. For everyone watching, thank you so much for joining us for this chat. Our last chat of the summer with Ashley Helkin of Cotton Patch Cafe, John Isbell of Portillo's, and Todd Woodruff of Salt and Straw, West Coast, Midwest, South, Northeast. We got it all. Follow us on www.opus.so. And and thank you so much, y'all. We really appreciate you.
Thanks for having us.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.